Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Generation Women, the show that invites a woman in her 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s to tell an original story on a theme. My name's Georgia Clark, and it is my immense pleasure to welcome you to our first ever show at Joe's Pub. We're all very excited to be here in this iconic New York institution for a night of warm and wonderful storytelling. So just by a quick round of applause, who has been to a Generation Women show before? Well, thank you for coming out. Who's never been to a Generation Women show before? Oh well, spoiler alert, you're all in for a treat, because tonight is our best of show, and that means we invited the best of the best to come here and tell a story for you. So these are your best of performers here on stage, repping Teams 20 through Team 70. And so what you're going to see tonight is wild and wacky stories on various themes. Usually we have one theme. Tonight you're going to see a whole bunch of themes. To celebrate not just the art of storytelling, which we love, and true stories from the heart, but really as a platform for all women, but particularly older women. That's the mission of the night, and which is why we run the show age chronologically. So we'll start with Team 20s and end with Team 70s over here. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Before we start, a few quick housekeeping. Please make sure to turn your phone off or on silent. If you do snap a sneaky pic of us, you can tag us on Instagram. We're Generation Women. And there's going to be no intermission, but make sure that you tip your servers and order the delicious food and beverages, which we've been doing ourselves. And now I'm going to bring up our first performer. Representing, oh thank you. You don't have to keep clapping every time, but I tell you what, I do like it. So, representing Team 20, Ashley Gavin is a national touring comedian. Her comedy has been featured on Hulu, SiriusXM, Refinery 29, and more. Her web series, Gay Girl, Straight Girl, has over 400,000 views and has been featured in Galore Mag, and she's performing on the theme, What I Truly Desire. Give it up for Ashley.
Hey, guys. Yeah, you guys are tepid. I mean, I'm glad that you're here, but so far I don't really like you. Obviously, I don't mean that. Clearly, I'm gay. You can stop thinking about it. Okay. I am a stand-up comedian. Okay, this side of the room is laughing. You guys need to catch up. Okay. Let's do a joke to get you guys warmed up, okay? All right, sounds good. I just got out of a 6-year relationship, you guys. Yes, wow, tepid again. Jeez, this is my best and gayest jacket. Why don't you love me yet? Yeah, 6 years is a long time, so I'm trying to spice things up a little bit. You know, I'm different than I was 6 years ago. I got invited to a lesbian sex party. Yeah, they're real. Did you know that? They're real. A lesbian orgy. I went. A little disappointing, actually. Just a book club. How do you get invited to a book club and think it's an orgy? Well, the girl was really cute, and she was like, "You should come. We're doing Little Women." Right. I was like, I don't care how big they are. All right, cool. You guys are laughing now. That's nice. So my theme was what I truly desire. So let me start with this. Like I said, I'm gay, but I'm insecure about my sexuality, which is a weird thing to say when you're gay because you have to come out and do like a whole thing about it. But I am, and I don't want to. Okay, I don't want to sleep with a guy. Okay, so. Like, I feel like the way that I feel about sleeping with a guy is like the same way a frat boy feels about sleeping with a guy. Like, I'm pretty sure I don't want to do it, but it keeps popping into my head, you know? Are there straight, how do you keep that down, you know? You just light a match and press it to your arm every time you see a Hemsworth? What do you do with that? Yeah, I'm insecure about it, and here's the issue is boners. I'm fascinated by them. Academically, okay? Don't be weirded. They are shapeshifters. It's not that strange for me to be intrigued on a scientific level, all right? You're still getting warmed up. I feel like the way that I feel about, but you guys remember a few years ago when the eclipse happened? That's how I am about boners. There's a lot of hype, and I want to see it, but I know if I look too long, I'm going to do some permanent damage. Like, that's... So to deal with this, I was like, okay, well, like, I don't want to sleep with a guy, but I do want to see a boner. So, like, what do I do, you know? So this is a few years ago. I was young. I was in my early 20s, and I thought, oh, I should go on Craigslist. Yeah. So that's what I did. I went on there and I posted. And then the title of my post was, Lesbian Seeks Penis for Educational Purposes. I got 306 responses in 10 minutes. This is a true story. I feel like I'm being very someone's texting. So it's fine. This is so not a stand-up. If this were a stand-up venue, I'd be like, hey, yeah, stop it. But I can't roast you guys. But yeah, so I got all these responses, and I was like, this is a lot. Like, what am I gonna do with this? Like, who am I gonna choose? All this shit. And then I thought, oh, I have a better idea. I'm gonna create a flash mob. Some of you don't know what a flash mob is. I responded to every guy individually via email, and I told them to meet me at the mall wearing a red shirt. And that I would be at the mall wearing a red shirt. I didn't do that. I just went to the mall and I stood on the balcony and I watched them congregate. Really the closest I've ever been to God, I think. It was like I unlocked some insane cheat code in The Sims. Team 20s is laughing at that reference. It's just like all these white men in red shirts. It was Boston. It was mostly white men. So, anyway, I'm up there and I'm watching them congregate. And I realized, like, in that moment that I didn't really... I had ample opportunity. You know what I mean? All these guys down there. And by the way, these guys were like not tipped off at all. It was the funniest thing to just see them down there not even looking. Because if 300 girls showed up to the same event wearing the same outfit, there'd be like an actual riot, right? Like, people would die. But these guys, they were so hyped up on their own testosterone about this like lesbian seeing their dick. It was like, kind of like they were all in uniform going to the same sports game. You know what I mean? They were excited. They were like, gonna show my dick to a lesbian. It was great. But anyway, in that moment, I sort of realized that I didn't really want to see a boner. What I realized was that I think I just wanted validation about my own sexuality. Because when you grow up gay, particularly when you grow up as a gay woman, whenever you learn anything about sex is penetration, period, right? Well, periods are involved in sex education. Right? But like that, when you learn sex ed as a kid, or even in the Bible, right? It doesn't even mention lesbians. It says, thou shalt not lay with another man, but that's clearly for men, because at the time, women couldn't read. So like, we've been like completely erased from this whole process. And I think I just wanted to know that, like, my sex counted, you know? And even today, like, with our, like, woke society or whatever, I still get weird questions from guys. Like, men will still ask me, like, how lesbians have sex, right? Which is such a ridiculous question. And one time, this dude, he was like, well, you know, he asked me how I had sex, and I knew what he was asking me, and I was like, I don't use toys, like, if that's what you're asking me. And he was like, what? You don't own a strap-on? And I was like, no. He was like, no one's ever used a strap-on on you? And I was like, no. And his face, just such sadness. Like, he was like, you know, no penis, what the fuck, you know? There are women in here laughing, the men in here are confused. They're like, no penis, what the fuck? And I was like, well, how did you think we had sex? And he was like, all the confidence in the world. I don't know, just double-ended dildo. Double-ended dildo? Are you out of your mind? Do you know how strong my vagina would have to be? I'm sorry, to hold an apparatus inside of me and insert it into... It's a physics problem, okay? Every force has an equal and opposite force. It's two girls fucking a pool noodle, all right? I get it, it's light outside, and, you know, Team 20s is laughing. There are people in here who are, like, gonna go home and call their lesbian niece and be like, what the fuck did I just hear? By the way, if you call your lesbian niece, please also conference me in. If you don't know how to conference, I can teach you. That was rude. But yeah, so I guess I realized that I didn't need to see this boner, and I got a lot out of, you know, catfishing those guys into that situation, and all sex is great. I'm a comedian, not some sort of philosopher. But if you're boning and you're having fun, doesn't matter if there's a boner there, right? Okay, thanks, guys. I'm Ashley Gavin.
Ashley Gavin. I just got married to a woman this summer. Thank you. And so I am also aware of the maybe insensitive questions, but I will answer one of them for you now. Neither one of us is the man. That's sort of the whole point. Next up, representing Team 30s, Jen Kwok is a Chinese-American writer-performer who can be seen on this season of Netflix's Friends from College. As a singer-songwriter, Jen is releasing an EP later this year based on Songs for One, an intimate concert series in which she performed one-on-one for over 100 individuals. She's performing a piece inspired by the theme, No Going Back, Stories of Moments That Changed Everything. Please welcome Jen.
So this is a story about the female body and the magic that it can do. And the most magical part about the story is that I'm a unicorn. And I may not look like a unicorn on the outside. I don't have hooves, I don't have a horn, but I guarantee you that on the inside, 100% my reproductive organs are very My Little Pony. I have a rare genetic condition called unicornuate uterus, which is essentially when half of the female anatomy is fully formed. So I have like half C's of a uterus and a fallopian tube connected to it, just one, and that is the horn. And it's pretty rare. There's like 0.025% of the population has this. So kind of appropriately enough, there are not a lot of us. And I found out about my unicornuate uterus when I hit my mid-30s, and my husband and I started trying to have children. And that's what they call geriatric maternal age, apparently. And when you reach geriatric maternal age, they suggest that you try for about 6 months on your own, and then you take a bunch of tests. So I took one of these tests, and my doctor calls to tell me to come in person to get the news, which is never good. And my doctor is kind of like the Russian version of Samantha from Sex and the City. So like she's so hot and she like sticks the thing and she swabs, but she does it with like this attitude and like strappy sandals. Like it's an experience. So she, brings me in and she's like, you have a unicornate uterus. Like, it is super rare. Not a lot is known about it, but like, whatever is known, like, fucking sucks. And like, my words, not hers. And she's like, you can do IUI, you can do IVF, you can do all these things. I have another patient that had 3 children with a unicornate uterus. Sometimes people, when they try fertility treatments, they magically become pregnant on their own. And she's telling me all this stuff, and it's all super positive, but I'm not hearing any of it because I'm just still stuck on the fact that my uterus is not like that gorgeous V cave with jazz hands coming out of it that like they told us we all had in health class. Like, I don't have that. So, I have this like dinky thing that's like, that she just told me about. And I start getting teary-eyed. And she just looks at me. And I could just tell she's like, no. Like, she's like, I don't do tears. Like, I'm just like, oh, this woman's not gonna have me crying in her office. So like, I get my ass out of there. And I walk down Fifth Avenue just sobbing in broad daylight because I'm not a Samantha, I'm a Charlotte. So, this is obviously crazy news because I'm like, I've lived for 34 years in this body and I didn't really know this body, And whatever genetic cards that I was dealt when I was in my mom's womb, that is what's going to dictate everything that's going to happen with my womb now. And I get sad, I get depressed. My husband and I take some time off from trying because we're just afraid of the risks. And we discuss, how do we want to move forward? And we decide to do IUI. So the morning that I supposed to go in for IUI, which is where they shoot the sperm like exactly to where the egg is, like at the exact time that the egg's being released. So it's like an express bus. Like you just you pay extra, but like you get there. So the day that I'm supposed to go in, they start it on your first day of your cycle, and I don't get my period. So I'm supposed to get on a bus that afternoon to Pennsylvania for this artist retreat. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I missed it. I'll just try it next month. And I'm like, sleeping in a horse barn, like chopping wood, drinking at a campfire, writing songs in the middle of a field. I'm doing everything but getting my period. And so I come back on the bus at Port Authority, and I buy a pregnancy test. I get home, and I see the 2 pink lines that I've been waiting to see for almost a year. And it felt like magic. I was pregnant for 8 weeks, and then we went in for our 8-week appointment, and there was no baby there. And our doctor told us, you're probably miscarrying normally, but there's a small chance that you could be having something called an ectopic pregnancy, which is where the embryo implants outside of the uterus and never survives, and the mothers sometimes do, sometimes they don't. And she's like, but go home, be normal. And and so like literally like went to a bar, was playing Heads Up and like drinking Guinness. And it was Labor Day weekend and things were normal until they weren't. And one morning I wake up and I'm just like on the floor, feeling like all my internal organs are just trying to escape my body. It's this feeling that people say is actually worse than giving actual labor. And so I call 911, and they take me to the hospital, and it turns out I did have an ectopic pregnancy. The embryo had implanted in a fallopian tube, and it had burst, and I lost a liter of blood. And I'll never know how close to death I actually was. All I know is that they didn't want to risk sending me to Manhattan to my doctor or having my doctor come from Manhattan to Queens. And I mean, and any good real estate agent will tell you how close Manhattan and Queens are, but when you're fucking dying and it's rush hour, they are not close at all. So they prep me for surgery, and I go into surgery just making peace with the fact I'm gonna lose my one good tube and one way of conceiving naturally. And I come out, and the doctor's like, you won the lottery. The embryo implanted in a fragment of a tube that was previously undetected because it was so small. And the chances of that happening are 0.0007%. And yeah, magic. And that next spring, I got pregnant again. At 5 weeks, I miscarried normally. I was in the middle of a recording session working on my album, because that's what you do when you almost die and you realize you don't have that much time to make all the art you want to make. And I finished the recording session. I got on the 7 train, and I was like, nobody around me knows what's going on right now. And I wondered, and I still wonder, how many women have stood on the train just casually losing their babies while holding onto a subway pole. And last fall, I got pregnant again. I got so pregnant, I got to experience the magic of morning sickness. I got so pregnant that I went in for a TV audition for the role of pregnant woman. I got so pregnant, I came to this show, Generation Women, and talked about how pregnant I was. And I got so pregnant that people asked me if I was having twins. Guys, I wasn't, thank you. And I got so pregnant that I made it to 39 weeks, 2 days, and I was in labor for 12 hours. I pushed for 2.5 hours, and this is my son, Wolf. He was born 9 weeks ago. This is actually, ironically, my first night out, leaving the house to talk about him while he's at my house. So yeah, I could have never guessed, this is a condition that all the risks are doubled the whole time. All the risks are doubled. But somehow my dinky unicorn horn worked 3 times. My half a blob of a uterus carried 1 baby. And that's the story of how a unicorn gave birth to a wolf. Thank you.
Kwok. We're just so happy to have little Wolf in the world and such a happy ending to a story. And that story just makes me think of how fucking powerful women are and the incredible work our bodies do to maintain this human race that seems intent on killing itself. But hey, we keep doing it and hoping it gets better. And it's going to get better right now, because I'm bringing up another fantastic storyteller representing Team 40s. Verta Maloney is a storyteller, yogi, mama warrior, and anti-racism facilitator. Verta currently runs her own business, helping individuals and organisations share their racial autobiographies and stories in order to act on and undo racism in this lifetime. She's performing a story on the theme, My Truth About Aging. Please welcome to the stage, Verta.
So I remember the moment I started to think of myself as almost divorced, April 2014, 3 months after my 42nd birthday. That's when I penned these words. I'm almost divorced. I've been almost divorced for 3 years. What does almost divorce even mean, you might ask? Separate homes. I'm finding myself at ease in both. Separate lives. There are parts of who he is becoming as a man and as a father that I know little to nothing about. A separate peace. The willingness to navigate this new, unanticipated place we find ourselves occupying with a bit of calm amidst the storm. Almost divorce means papers filed as processes are stalled by denial, by lawyers, by finances, by busy lives, by parenting, and by love remembered and redefined. That it will happen soon and simultaneously in the time it was meant to take. The time needed to find a bit of love and grace for myself and for him, and dare to wear that love and grace with reckless and cautious abandon. Almost divorce means loss. The loss of an intimacy shared between a husband and a wife. An intimacy I stumbled during my marriage and my life to fully comprehend or embrace until it was in my early 40s and divorced. Single parent with 2 whole humans and divorced. The rise of Netflix and divorced. Maybe I should get a cat. After dinner and lots of drinks with a friend who refused to let this be my story, I traded my cat lady fantasies for my very first online dating profile. Yeah, okay. Honestly, I never really learned how to date back in the day, so trust and believe I was clueless when it came to online dating. And I wrote a little something about it. Here it goes. Let's call him Raymond. Raymond was the first that I pursued. What does that even mean when you're online? How do you pursue someone when you date online? How do you pursue someone when you're 41 and you've never really dated a day in your life? In my case, it meant I made first contact. He claimed he was looking for someone to belong to. So was I. It means after he did not respond to my second message, the brilliance of technology. Not only do we get to expect an immediate response from a message, we can also see when our messages are sent, when they're received, when they're read, and we can see when someone is online. So what the fuck? I saw him online. So why wasn't he responding? I was not having it. He was the one after all. So I sent him a super long message. I'm talking paragraphs, explaining who I was, explaining to him how we were online at the same exact time and messaged each other at the same time. It was totally a sign. Explaining how I was choosing to live as bold a life as I could, and in essence, how dare he not respond to such a thing? His response after like 60 hours, which is an eternity: sorry for the delayed response, wanna go get a drink, call me. 12 words. I was all in. So much so, in fact, I had visions of our future. The future of things seriously got away from me. The future of things always get away from me. I saw him coming to my apartment after work, after a long day. I had met his mother a few times already. I think she really liked me. I saw us riding our bikes together in some very tree-lined section of Brooklyn. Our cameras in our bags so we could stop and take photographs. We were inspired, totally inspired us. Then we go home and we download our photos and be like, oh my gosh, you captured that. I captured the same thing. Yeah, all of this happened all up in my mind before we even said hello for real. Yes, I know, you see the train wreck that's about to happen. Kind of missed that. So Raymond was he was a super fabulous vision of beauty when I met him at a super fabulous little restaurant one evening after he got off work from some super fabulous job at some super fabulous nonprofit where he gives of his super fabulous self because he was, super fabulous. And I knew all of this only after 35 minutes together in a restaurant in downtown Manhattan, because let's face it, I am super fabulous at this online dating thing. And as I stated on my online dating profile, knowledge is power, and I Google stalked the fuck out of him before we even met. So I knew his favorite movie was Dead Presidents before we even talked about it, and I pretended like I didn't know. I knew he was close to his mother and that he played sports in college. I knew he wanted to make a difference in the world with his work. I knew he was looking for the woman he could belong to. Me, pick me. I knew so very much, and I knew that he had to be the one, failing to recognize in the moment that I knew absolutely nothing, pushing instead of letting life happen. So when he invited me over to his place for our second date, yes, you heard that correctly. When he invited me over to his place for our second date, I was all excited. He wanted to cook for me. How sweet, how thoughtful. I would totally want the man that I belong to want to prepare a good meal for me. I borrowed a casual but sexy top from my twin sister, who is the complete opposite from me. She is practical and skeptical, the yang to my impractical and trusting yin. She was like, why the fuck are you going to his place? He could be a fucking serial killer. Obviously, she didn't know Raymond. He was super fabulous, and serial killers are not super fabulous. Oh, and neither was Raymond. The meal was trash. I told him that I didn't eat meat, and he cooked chicken because he said that that's not meat. We made out. He walked me to his door. He watched me walk out of his door into the rain. Before I could turn around to ask for an umbrella or anything chivalrous, Raymond was gone. Like a ghost. Yeah, you know the deal. I crashed and burned and skidded my way through online dating. Thank God I kept going to therapy. I kept reading. I started finding out who the hell I was, who the hell I am, who the hell I want to be in this life. Surrounded myself with women who loved me and said, hold the fuck up. When I was about to send the crazy lady email to Raymond after he ghosted, and after maybe 3 or 6 voicemail messages that I might have left on his phone. So 2 years ago, I paused online dating for a little bit and went back to my old lady roots and decided to meet people IRL. I'm currently crashing, burning, skidding through all of that, but I'm enjoying myself. And last year, a dear friend and about 1,500 of my IG followers took the trip of our lives to Italy. No, really, go peep the IG story highlights. It was epic. And how fitting that on the day that my ex-husband, whom I do love, was getting married, I would be on the plane writing these words. In Italy, the universe sent me a very good prospect, perhaps an excellent one. This one was a unique fish in a unique pond, standing out amidst the debris left by tourists and travelers, unable or unwilling to see the lives being lived right before their eyes. He has eyes that seem a little bit sad, but he doesn't know that I think that. Honestly, this very good Italian prospect may not even know how much he gave me by way of love, and it doesn't even matter, because as Bell Hooks would say, I connected with someone in a way that makes me think I am on the way to knowing love.
Verta Maloney. Oh boy, I crashed and skidded my way through online dating as well, let me tell you. But that's how I met the woman I married, so don't give up. All right, next up I'm going to tell you a story that I performed at our Christmas show, and the theme was naughty, nice, or nasty. Here we go. To be human is to know weakness. To be human is to be naughty. I am not immune. I know temptation, and I give into it weekly, daily. This is a story about cheese. My darling cheese, no one knows how long you have been enticing us humans. You predate recorded history. There's no definitive evidence of the first community who realised that curdled milk could be solid and delicious. Who amongst us can resist the uptown funk of a washed rind taleggio, the dreamy spell of creamy brie, or the rock and roll strut of an aged Gouda? How about the coy charm of a baby Swiss? Be you grilled or broiled, sprinkled or sliced, you have me so firmly under your spell that I willingly eat mould for you. I'm greedy for you, and one piece is never enough. 2 is company, 3 is a party. Yes, I'm talking cheese plates. But you, my delicious dairy queen, are a double-edged cheese knife. If it wasn't for you, I'd have the stomach of an Instagram influencer and the digestive capability of a newborn baby. I'd be healthier, wealthier, quite possibly wiser. How many hours have I lost, hands pressed against the cheese display at the Bedford cheese shop, when I could have been reading something like Play-Doh or just something smart? But sweet cheese, you have also led me down a dark path. In days past, my haunting femme fromage has caused me to compromise the very moral fibre of my being. You are to blame for the most shameful part of my sordid, cheesy past. I must have you, but when I couldn't afford you, I took you. I'm 22 and living in a share house in Sydney. I'm a student activist, which means I oscillate between being outraged by the system and being drunk. I am that dangerous mix of entitled and scrappy, rebellious and greedy, chasing a Roquefort lifestyle on a cheddar budget. I shoplift. More specifically, I shoplift cheese. I walk the supermarket aisles with deliberate boredom, my face a blank slate, an adult mask of domestic tedium. Into my canvas tote, an illicit wheel of French camembert. Now, my signature move. A scarf or maybe a cardigan casually removed and placed on top of my haul. I select tin tomatoes, pasta, a banana, cheap shit. I move to the register. The quiet checkout girl scans my goods in silence. I count up my change. I smile. I'm always very friendly. As I stroll out of my small local shopping centre, which is just like a half dozen shops around an interior courtyard, I feel a surge of elation, a giddy, sizzling glee. Shoplifting is a high, and I'm getting very, very good at it. I am young and reckless and hungry for cheese, sweet creamy cheese. I think I am untouchable until the day it all falls apart. At the register, the girl asks if I have anything else in my bag. The question is unusual. It's an unusual day. Usually I lift an expensive cheese, maybe some chocolate, things I could have conceivably forgotten about in the bottom of my tote bag. But today, my bag bulges, heavy with greed. I should have said, yes, here you go. Part of me knows she knows. But the immediate humiliation of this, the admission of my guilt, is too much. I stare back at her dumbly. No? She signals someone. An older woman, sharp-eyed, appears like a magician's trick. Fear, just the suggestion of it, straightens my spine. The girl tells the woman, she says she doesn't have anything else. You took some cheese. The woman's response is immediate. They'd been watching me. I put it back, I lie. I didn't want it. Where? Think fast. In the aisle with the tins. Like every fucking aisle. Show me. My tote bites my bag at my shoulder as we walk the supermarket aisles, pretending to search for the cheese we both know is in my bag. Along with maybe $50 more of dark chocolate. My panic grows more powerful, the urge to flee threatening to overtake logic. I have to get out of here. Look, I'm late for work. I snap. I don't have a job. I don't know where the camembert is. I put it back. I push past her, hurrying for the exit. She's on my heels. It's in your bag. It's not, she raises her voice. I saw you put it in your bag. We are back at the register. My heart pulses a swift distress signal. Run, run, run. I have to go to work, to my fake job I don't have. I'm calling the police. She grabs my bag, detaining me. And it is this quick move, this physical accusation that undoes both of us, and we lose it. She's screaming, I'm screaming, I'm trying to wrench my arm from her grip, yelling, my father is a lawyer, my father is a lawyer. My father is a musician. People are staring, we're a spectacle. I'm caught, this is happening, I need to escape. My wallet and my keys are in my tote. All I need is my wallet that has my ID. I shove my free hand into my bag, miraculously find leather, yank it out, push her away, and I run. I run in the way that you expect someone to tackle you from behind, jerk you back or push you forward onto the concrete. I make it home, only a few blocks away. My roommate lets me in. I collapse in her arms and burst into tears, shaking with adrenaline and fear and shame. So much shame. Did I ever steal anything again? No way, Comte. Today, my love for cheese is lawful. I may have once been naughty, but now I'm nice. My name is Georgia Clark, and I'm a cheese-abiding citizen. And I know I'm not alone. Thank you. Still get weirdly adrenaline rush telling that story. It's from a very long time ago, but I'm just right back there running away from my local supermarket that I then couldn't shop at anymore for the few years that I lived in that house, and then had to walk half an hour away. Look, you don't really think things through when you're in your teen 20s, but It was fun. And if you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I have a crazy story about shoplifting cheese or online dating or getting a bunch of people to show my penis or getting pregnant, whatever, we would love to have you do the show. You can apply to be a storyteller through our website, generationwomen.us. We're always casting for our monthly shows. You can also sign up there for our newsletter. We release tickets to our mailing list first. So it's always a great idea to be on the mailing list, to get in early. And we would love to have you join our storytelling community. So look us up. All right. Next up, it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage, representing Team 50s, Fiona Davis is the nationally best-selling author of historical novels set in iconic New York City buildings, including her most recent, The Chelsea Girls. She began her career here in New York as an actress. After getting a master's degree at Columbia Journalism School, she fell in love with writing, leapfrogging from editor to freelance journalist before finally settling down to write fiction. She's performing a story on the theme Anniversary. Please welcome to the stage, Fiona Davis.
On May 18th, 2014, I sat in my garden with my golden doodle Ruby beside me and waited for my husband to call from his London business trip and say happy anniversary on our 12th year of marriage. The phone finally rang, and I could hear his coworkers in the background. They were all driving somewhere. And he talked and then said goodbye. He'd forgotten. Fine, right? This happens. But this was no regular anniversary. This was an important one for him to remember, a test of sorts. You see, a few months earlier, I'd noticed he'd picked up this interesting new habit. Whenever I walked into a room where he was sitting reading his iPad, as I walked behind him, he'd snap the cover shut. Snap. I'd walk into the room, snap. So I did what any good investigative journalist would do. The next time I saw it charging in the bedroom, I lifted the cover. Right there in front of me was a passionate email to a woman I'd never heard of before from a Gmail account of his that I didn't recognize. I scrolled up to the very first email of the thread, which was dated about a month earlier, and read it. Dear so-and-so, he'd written, I love my wife, but. I love my wife, but. I finished reading, closed the iPad, and sat on the side of the bed. I started to shiver. It was like 1,000 needles were pricking my skin. My husband, the man who was goofy, kind, brilliant, and a little dorky, was not who I thought he was. More than anything, I just wanted to travel back in time and extract that knowledge out of my brain and go back to the happy family we were, or I thought we were. Now, my parents are both English, so of course my first thought was, I'll just pretend this never happened. Never happened, sweep it under the rug. My second thought, as someone who's always looking on the bright side, was, wait a minute, he said he loves me. He loves me. But we start marriage counseling, and by our anniversary, things are still up in the air. So you can see why the call meant a lot to me, why it was a test, and why I was so incredibly disappointed he forgot. My husband and I, we do all the usual, the therapy, the long discussions. At one point, we even have a not quite joking conversation over coffee as to whether or not his behavior is the result of a brain tumor. It's not. None of it takes, and by October of that year, I ask him to move out. It's a terrible day. Have you heard of micro expressions? They show up really fast and reveal what you're truly thinking or when you're lying. My husband was trying to look upset or sad, but for a fleeting moment, while he was packing, I caught this micro expression, and it revealed elation. He was finally free, and he hadn't had to be the one to pull the trigger. And so began what I call my year of D's, where everything that happened to me seemed to begin with that letter. I got divorced, my dad was diagnosed with dementia, and then my dog, who you'll remember is a doodle, died. I know. I moved into a short-term rental while I waited for a long-term renovation on a new apartment. The rental was full of Columbia undergrads, which made me feel very old. Coming back to that apartment was the hardest. I could usually contain my heartbreak for the long walk down the hallway from the elevator, but by the time I'd pulled out my key and unlocked the door, I was a weepy mess. There was no one left to greet me anymore, not even my dear doodle. I'd never felt so alone. But during this time, there was one good D. I started writing a book, which was called The Dollhouse. It was historical fiction, which involved intense research, and the challenges of writing that first draft kept my mood from spiraling downward. I made one of the characters a heartbroken journalist. Write what you know. And so began my double life. I had to get used to living in a state of suspended dread as the separation agreement was hashed out and my life upended. In that world, I was at the mercy of the lawyers and the financial consultants and the timeline of the court system. And this is hard when you're kind of a control freak, like I am. Now, the book, on the other hand, was all mine. I got to make every decision, right? I decided if my characters would be happy or sad, whether they lived or died. That was empowering. I wrote 1,500 words a day, 5 days a week, fueled by my grief, but also because I wanted to know how it all ended up for my characters and for me. And I learned something surprising. After the shock wore off, I realized I didn't mind being alone. In fact, I really enjoyed it. Once I moved out of the dorm and into my apartment, I realized I loved it. There was nothing better than Sunday morning with coffee and the newspaper in my sunny living room. I loved the silence. I loved the fact that I didn't have to plan dinner with anyone else in mind. I decided what I wanted to eat and when, which freed up tons of time for me to think about my work, whether to flesh out a new character or solve a plotting problem. Honestly, I think Virginia Woolf sold us short. She should have held out for a house of one's own, not just a room. As I've traveled around giving talks about my books, I'm often asked how I publish a book a year. And my answer is always the same. I'm divorced, I live alone, I don't have children, which means my time is mine to do whatever I want with, and I highly recommend it. In a room that's usually filled with married women with children, the statement never fails to draw a huge gasp, followed by cheers. You see, only once everything had been stripped away, dog, family, husband, home, did I realize my full potential. Not that there aren't tough days, there are. But here's the rub. The ability to write a book had been there all along. The ability to take care of myself had been there all along. But it took this cascade of loss for me to stand up and take notice. It wasn't until I started to ask myself what I wanted out of life and stopped putting everybody else's needs above my own that I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. A hard lesson to learn, but one that I will never forget. This year, I celebrated the 5th anniversary of my new life with a long weekend away. I bought myself this ring as a reminder that I'm in charge of my own happiness from now on. No more excuses, no more waiting. Happy anniversary to me.
The fabulous Fiona Davis, living life on her terms. Next up, representing Team 60s, Martha Frankel is a writer, knitter, poker player, and yenter. She is the executive director of Woodstock Book Fest and the host of Woodstock Book Talk. She runs StorySlams.com seasonally in Woodstock, New York. Her memoir, Hats and Eyeglasses, traces her addiction to gambling, and she's performing a story tonight on the theme Little White Lies. Give it up for Martha Frankel.
take a photo. I've been on that side many times. I flew so much in those days that the ticket agents at Tower Air would often bump me up to first class. I would bring some magazine swag, signed book, the not yet released Madonna CD. I just casually lay it on the counter. Next thing I knew, I'd be headed for first class. I'm not saying this story couldn't have happened in coach, but it wouldn't have been so comfy. At the gate, I took a Valium. When the plane was delayed, I took another one. By the time they pre-boarded, I could barely stand. I lurched to my window seat in row 2, unzipped my biker boots, put the Walkman's headphone on my ears, and turned Al Green up. I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so tired of being... Pulled my green velvet eye shades on, tucked my pillow against the window, and promptly went to sleep. I woke up 2 hours later. Drool was slipping down my chin. My neck was in a weird position. I took the eye shades off and looked at the guy sitting next to me, hair down past his shoulders, tapping on the tray table. A short beard, blue eyes. Jesus with a backbeat. I smiled. Where are you going, he asked. Well, I hope we're all going to Miami, I said. Yeah. Yes, he said, we are, but I mean, why? Oh, family. You? I'm a sound guy for a band. Our tour opens tomorrow in Miami. Oh, what band? The Allman Brothers. I decided I should go brush my teeth. As I stood up to squeeze past him, he got up too and leaned his body into mine. We stayed like that for a minute, face to face, belly to belly. Our breathing was louder than the engines. What's your name, he asked. I leaned right in. Greta Tiberia. Greta was a woman I barely knew. She had come into my husband's shop and bought a cutting board, and when I wrote up her receipt, I almost swooned from her name. I hear what you're thinking. There's a husband in this story? Yeah, there is. Don't be so judgy. It was the mid-'80s. Shit like that happened. This was pre-AIDS, before sex became a loaded weapon. It was that all too brief moment when women could go out and have fun without risk of pregnancy or disease, or your judgment. Sex was a currency, and it was fun to be rich in something. That husband, I read him this story last night. He walked across the room and kissed me proudly. So, back on the plane. I finally stepped out in the aisle. Oh, he said, you dropped this. I looked down. A little glassine envelope lay by my feet. We both stared at it until he bent down and picked it up. He held it out to me. Wait, is he a cop? Is this a setup? I took it anyway and went into the bathroom. I snorted a little. It was definitely Coke. I snorted more. When I got back to my seat, we threw a blanket over our heads and made out. That's the kind of thing you get to do in first class. He told me to come to the show the next night. He'd leave me a ticket at will call. The seat would be right in front of the sound booth. When I showed up at the Sunrise Theater, the sound guy was so happy to see me. At one point, I sat on his lap while he worked the board. The show was great. Greg Allman was still in his drug-induced haze, but so was the entire audience. When the show ended, the sound guy told me to meet him at the hotel bar. Pretend you don't know me, he said. I was sipping rock and rye when the sound guy showed up with the musicians. He sat a few seats away. I made eye contact with Greg. He moved right next to me. I was happy to have the sound guy that close. I can't wait to get you upstairs, he said. I leaned in and kissed him. We canoodled at the bar for another hour. He introduced me to everyone else, told them of his great fortune meeting me on that plane. Everyone called me Greta. Here's my room number, the sound guy said, handing me a little slip of paper. Give me 10 minutes and then come knock on the door. Pretend you're a stranger, okay? I wondered why a stranger would be knocking on a strange hotel door at 3 a.m, but Greta just nodded like that kind of thing happened to her every day of the week. I watched girls in short skirts get in line to be interviewed by Greg Allman's lackey. The chosen girl would be invited up to Greg's room to give him a blowjob. I wondered just how many times one guy could come in a night. I waited half an hour thinking that would get the sound guy even crazier. Finally, I knocked on his door. Room service, I said in my chipper voice. Door's open, he said. He was lying on the bed in the dark, smoking a joint. I was awkward and not sure where I should go. Can you do something for me, he asked. Sure, I said, walking over to the bed. He grabbed hold of my wrist. Can you pretend that you're a nun and I've been a very, very bad boy? The great Greta Tiberia thought this over for a long while. She thought about rulers and spankings and scared little boys. She thought about God and habits and the temptation to sin. And then, like the smart Jew she was, she hightailed it out of there.
Martha Frankel. Oh boy. I've been doing first class or wrong. I'm just kidding, I've never flown first. Well, that is bringing us up to our last performer for this evening, and if that makes you as sad as it makes me, you'll have to come and see us again. We're a monthly show at Caveat, which is a theatre in the Lower East Side. We would love to have you come and join us. Our next show is September 18th, and the theme is Flesh and Bone, Stories of the Female Body. And then we'll have shows every month for the rest of time. We're also we're doing a one-off show in November called Funny Over 50. And that's because we have just so many wonderful performers on our stage, obviously you've seen tonight, who are funny and over 50. So we're going to do a showcase of funny women over 50 on November 19th. If you join our mailing list, you'll be first in line to get tickets for that. I'm sure it will sell out as we sold out tonight. Thank you guys for coming, for making this such a wonderful night. Thank you to these performers, to Joe's Pub, producers Jessica Laurie, Camila Salazar. We've had such a blast, but it's not over yet. It is my pleasure to bring up, representing Team 70s, Verna Gillis is a freelance producer with a PhD in ethnomusicology who gained recognition for her work promoting and producing music from various cultural backgrounds. She now performs her one older woman show, Tales from Geriatric Park on the Verge of Extinction, and has published a book of one-liners, I Just Want to Be Invited, I Promise Not to Come. She's also performing a story on the theme, My Truth About Aging. Please welcome our final performer for this evening to the stage, Verna Gillis.
I don't know how to do this, okay. Yeah. I gave myself a big surprise party for my 75th. If you don't think turning 75 isn't one big fucking surprise, just wait. I will no longer die young. One thing to cross off my anxiety list. Here I am, closer to dead than to alive, wondering what will be my last place on earth and what will take me out, knowing that one day the last thing I say will be the last thing I said, and vice versa. The future closer to the present than it's ever been. If I don't start peeing before my pants are down, that's a good day. If I'm even thinking about peeing, it's already too late. My brand of adult pads is called Free to Pee, You and Me. Laugh as hard as you want, ladies. On the rag once again. On the road to total incontinence. Navigating loss and less on the rougher seas of older, my partner of 19 years died in 2017. Life after death is about those of us who remain. Death is a life-changing experience. In the last stages of his decline, I could judge my mental health by whether or not I engaged with telemarketers. One day it was a rage aria. I slammed down the phone on the last motherfucker piece of shit. The phone rang again. He was calling me back. Suck my cock! Suck my cock! I started seeing a grief counselor. I asked her about her group. I'm not sure they get you, she said. Get me? I asked. Well, you do curse a lot, she said. That's true. I do. I acknowledge. However, I'm civilized. I'm socialized. I don't tell anyone, go fuck yourself or fuck you, unless they deserve it. I was always emotionally available. The problem was, which emotions? Game show idea, blameless. 5 people who never had children tell their stories. And then the audience votes for the person who made the best contribution by passing along her emotional DNA. My point of sanity was in not having children, and the children I never had are grateful. A friend posted a photo of a group of us from the previous evening on Facebook. I look at the photo and I'm not in it. And then I see a woman wearing the same clothing I had been wearing. A holy fucking shit moment. The following day I see my nephew and I ask him, when you look at me, do you see someone you recognize? Yes, he responds, looking at me blankly. Later he emails that often he doesn't understand where I'm coming from. He will, just give him 30 years. I'm going to tell you the worst thing you can say to an older person. You've never looked better. Why do I even have a vagina? I asked my gynecologist. I don't know, she said. At this time of life, my vagina is more or less like a vestigial organ. I would like to trade it in for something more useful, like a larger bladder. When I was a child, I thought that old age was an affliction. I would see groups of old people sitting on chairs outside. They had their own particular smell. They looked shriveled. I would hold my breath when I passed them, not wanting to catch whatever it was that made them look that way. One day, perhaps, a very young child will hold her breath as she passes me. Mortality sightings on the rising. Existential terror Have a great day. I need a psychopractor for daily attitude adjustments. I often hear people lamenting their imperfections. I strive for imperfection. It would be a major step up from being totally whacked. The 11-year-old daughter of a friend was visiting, and she told me that her parents think she's too young to have an iPhone. She then looked at me quizzically and said, "How old were you when you got your first iPhone?" 65, I replied. She looked stunned for a minute, and then we both got hysterical laughing. She hadn't realized there was a time before iPhones. Someone recently took a photograph of me with my phone and then immediately passed the phone to me. If that had not been the case, I would not have known who I was looking at. I have become the grandma doll. Wind her up, and she won't remember what she was going to say. Pretty soon you can feed her and change her diapers, and she'll fart all on her own. I find that my mind doesn't work in mysterious ways. Long-term memory is part of this time of life, and suddenly I remembered and now will share with you the story of my first blowjob. I was 13. He was 14. He loved it. Marijuana is the one addiction at which I draw the line. No way am I giving that up. Mind altering? You bet. Good idea. When I'm stoned, I don't get the munchies. I reserve domain names. My most recent is shitgoddammotherfucker.com. There's a song in there somewhere. My new practice is called mindlessness. I tried mindfulness, however. If you knew what my mind was full of, you wouldn't recommend it for me. If they did a printout of my thoughts, the thought police would arrest me. On a good day, I tread water in the think tank. My segues have become confidential. I could always keep a secret, and now I keep it from myself. I know that just because I don't remember something doesn't mean it didn't happen. And just because I remember doesn't mean it did. The certitude of the great uncertainty is more certain. I read, you can know you're in deep shit if you leave your car keys in the freezer. What about the sponge in the refrigerator? Does that count? Now when I can't find something, I start with the freezer so I can relax. I have some new names for bands of older. The Dry Vaginas, Los Impotentes, the Post-Sexuals, Game of Groans. I have discovered the cure for hypochondria. Live long enough and it all becomes real. Everything is as it never was. What happened to the burning bush that used to be between my legs? All I know is the bald eagle has landed. The hairs on my legs made off with my libido. and the hairs under my arms have migrated to my chin. My new bra size is 36 long. Horny comes, horny goes. The older I get, the faster my skin is separating from my bones. I realize that if I were to stand on my head, I would suffocate. However, if I could have stood on my head, my whole life would have been different. Musical chairs was always where it's at. 60 is the new 60. 77 is the new 77. We are the olders. I'll toke to that. At this very moment, all of us here are the oldest we have ever been.
I'd like to invite all the ladies up for one bow. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out to Joe's Pub, and hopefully we'll see you next time. We're Generation Women. Good night.